Captain Hyunwoo stared at the screen in his quarters aboard the merchant vessel Morning Star. The coffee in his hand had gone cold an hour ago, but he barely noticed. For the past 20 minutes, he had been reading the same report over and over, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The Morning Star was 3 days into a routine cargo run to the outer colonies. They carried medical supplies, construction materials, and food rations. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. That was how Hyunwoo liked it. He had been running cargo for 15 years, and the most exciting thing that ever happened was a faulty gravity generator in Sector 7. But now, everything had changed. The distress signal had come through during the night shift. Ji-won, his young engineer, had picked it up while running system checks. At first, she thought it was interference from a solar storm. Then she cleaned up the signal and realized what it was. A desperate cry for help from the Keltheran system. Hyunwoo knew the Keltherans. Everyone did. They were insect-like beings who stood about 5 feet tall, with delicate wings and compound eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. They were artists and philosophers. Their poetry was studied across the galaxy. Their music could make grown humans weep. They had no weapons, no military, no concept of organized violence. They believed that all life was precious and that conflicts should be resolved through understanding and dialogue. The galaxy loved them for it. Now, someone was killing them. Hyunwoo set down his cold coffee and walked to the bridge. Ji-won was there, her fingers flying across multiple screens. She looked up when he entered, and he could see the fear in her eyes. "Captain, I have been monitoring all frequencies. The situation is worse than we thought." "Show me," Hyunwoo said. Ji-won pulled up the data on the main screen. Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. The Vrak's Dominion had appeared from beyond charted space 6 weeks ago. Nobody knew where they came from or why they had suddenly decided to attack. What everyone did know was that they were efficient killers. The Vraks were massive reptilian creatures, each one standing nearly 8 feet tall, covered in thick scales that could deflect small arms fire. Their ships were brutal and functional, designed for one purpose: destruction. They had hit the outer Keltheran colonies first. 3 planets wiped clean of life in a matter of days. The Keltherans had sent peaceful envoys, trying to communicate, trying to understand what they had done wrong. The Vraks had killed the envoys and broadcast the executions across all frequencies as a warning. The Galactic Council had responded immediately, sending their peacekeeping forces. But the Council's ships were designed for patrol duty and showing the flag, not for actual war. The galaxy had enjoyed 300 years of peace. Real combat was something people read about in history books. The Vraks had destroyed the peacekeeping forces in less than an hour. "How many dead?" Hyunwoo asked quietly. "Current estimates are over 2 billion Keltherans," Ji-won said, her voice shaking. 4 more colonies have fallen. Only the homeworld remains, and the Vrak's fleet is gathering for a final assault. Hyunwoo closed his eyes. 2 billion. He could not even imagine a number that large. Each one had been a living being with thoughts and dreams and families. What about reinforcements? "Where is the Council fleet?" 3 weeks away, Ji-won said. "By the time they arrive, it will be over." Hyunwoo walked to the window and stared out at the stars. 3 weeks. The Keltherans would be extinct in 3 weeks, and the galaxy would lose something beautiful it could never get back. "Sir, there is something else," Ji-won said hesitantly. "I received a direct communication. It is from a Keltheran diplomat named Daeun. She is requesting any ship in range to respond." "Put it through," Hyunwoo said. The screen flickered, and a Keltheran face appeared. Daeun looked young, though it was hard to tell with their species. Her compound eyes were filled with tears and her wings drooped with exhaustion. "Please," she said, her voice breaking. "Anyone who can hear this. We need help. The Vraks are coming. We have nowhere to run. Our children are dying. Please, someone help us." The transmission cut out. Hyunwoo stood frozen, Daeun's desperate plea echoing in his mind. "Captain, what do we do?" Ji-won asked. Hyunwoo knew what he should do. He should follow regulations. Turn the ship around, head back to human space, and let the Council handle it. The Morning Star was a cargo hauler, not a warship. They had no weapons, no shields, nothing that could help in a fight. Going to Keltheran space would be suicide. But he kept seeing Daeun's face. Kept hearing her voice. "Set course for the Keltheran system," he said quietly. Ji-won's eyes went wide. "Sir, that violates about 15 different regulations. We could lose our license. We could lose the ship. I know, Hyunwoo said. Do it anyway. The Morning Star changed course, jumping to faster than light speed toward Keltharin space. The journey took 18 hours. Hyunwoo spent most of that time in his quarters, trying to figure out what he could possibly do when they arrived. He had no weapons, no plan, no way to fight, but he had to try. When they dropped out of FTL at the edge of Keltharin space, what they saw made Hyunwoo's blood run cold. The system was full of debris. Shattered orbital stations, destroyed cargo ships, the wreckage of the Council peacekeeping force, and in the middle of it all the Vrax fleet, hundreds of massive warships surrounding the Keltharin homeworld like predators circling wounded prey. Oh God, Jiwon whispered. They watched in horror as Vrax ships fired on orbital platforms. Explosions bloomed in space. Thousands of Keltharans were dying with each shot, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Hyunwoo made contact with the Keltharin homeworld. Daeun appeared on screen again, and this time she looked even worse. Behind her he could see chaos. People running, buildings burning, the sounds of destruction. You came, she said, and despite everything she smiled. I did not think anyone would come. I cannot fight them, Hyunwoo said, feeling helpless. I have no weapons. I'm sorry. It does not matter, Daeun said. Thank you for trying. Thank you for caring enough to try. Hyunwoo wanted to scream. He had come all this way, risked everything, and he could do nothing. He was going to watch an entire species die. Then Jiwon made a sound at her station. Captain, I found something. In the old Earth databases, there is an ancient military frequency, sealed for emergency use only. It has not been used in over 300 years. Hyunwoo turned to her. What kind of frequency? It is a recall code, Jiwon said, reading quickly. From before Earth joined the Galactic Council. From when humans still fought wars. It was supposed to activate if Earth or its allies ever faced extinction-level threats. Hyunwoo felt something stir in his chest. A crazy, desperate hope. Can you access it? I think so. But sir, those ships have been decommissioned for centuries. They are museum pieces, historical artifacts. Even if the frequency works, even if something responds, those ships would be ancient. Hyunwoo looked at the screen, at the Vrax fleet destroying everything in its path. At Daeun, trying to be brave even as her world ended. He thought about humanity's past, about the wars they had fought before joining the Council. Wars so terrible that Earth had gladly put away its weapons and embraced peace. Wars that the galaxy preferred to forget. Maybe it was time to remember. Send the signal, Hyunwoo said. All frequencies. Maximum power. Jiwon hesitated only a moment, then her fingers flew across the controls. A moment later, an ancient code broadcast into space carrying a simple message. Humanity's friends require aid. All units respond. They waited in silence. Around them, the Vrax continued their assault. The Keltharin homeworld burned. And somewhere in the darkness, something ancient began to wake. The signal reached the Oort cloud first. Deep in the frozen darkness at the edge of human space, automated facilities had floated in silence for 318 years. They were relics of a different age. Monuments to a time when humanity knew how to kill very, very well. Most people had forgotten they even existed, but they had not forgotten their purpose. When the ancient frequency activated, dormant systems began to wake. Power cores that had been cold for centuries sparked to life. Manufacturing systems that had printed their last warship before Earth joined the Galactic Council started running diagnostics. Construction drones emerged from storage, their programming unchanged since the day they were built. They had one job: build ships for war. On Earth, alarms went off in government buildings across 3 continents. In Geneva, at the headquarters of Earth's Council representative, Ambassador Taeyang was pulled from his bed at 3 in the morning. He stood in his office in his pajamas, staring at screens that showed impossible things. Tell me this is a malfunction, he said to the young officer who had woken him. The officer shook her head. Sir, it is real. The old protocols have activated. The shipyards in the Oort cloud are printing warships. Museum pieces are running startup sequences. Even the Mars storage facilities are opening. Taeyang felt cold. He was 83 years old. Old enough to remember the stories his grandfather had told him. Stories about Earth's last great war, fought in the asteroid belt against colonial separatists. A war so brutal that when it ended, humanity had looked at itself in horror and decided never again. They had built the peacetime fleet after that. Ceremonial ships with enough firepower to look impressive, but designed more for search and rescue than combat. They had joined the Galactic Council and embraced a new way of life. The old warships had been decommissioned, mothballed, or turned into museums, but they had never been destroyed. "How many ships are we talking about?" Taeyang asked. The officer checked her screens. "Current estimates show 50 capital ships, 200 cruisers, and approximately 500 smaller vessels." "Sir, those are just the museum pieces. The automated yards are printing more." Taeyang sat down heavily. "Get me Admiral Sora." "Sir, Admiral Sora has been dead for almost 200 years. "No," Taeyang said quietly. "She has been sleeping." "Wake her up." In orbit around Mars, the dreadnought Iron Resolve had floated in silence since the year 2530. It was the flagship of Earth's last military fleet, a monster of a ship 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that the modern galaxy had never seen. School children took field trips to walk its corridors. Historians studied its design. Artists painted its imposing silhouette against the red planet. Now, for the first time in 3 centuries, its reactors were coming online. Deep in the ship's core, in a chamber that only a handful of people knew existed, a preserved consciousness began to wake. Admiral Sora had commanded this ship in its final battle. When the war ended and peace was declared, she had volunteered for the preservation program. Her body had died, but her mind had been saved, digitized, stored against a day that everyone hoped would never come. That day had arrived. Sora's awareness expanded slowly. First came sensation, the feeling of the ship around her like a second body. Then came memory, centuries of stored data flooding in. Finally came understanding. She accessed current events, read the distress call, saw the Vraks destroying the Keltherans. She had been asleep for 318 years. The galaxy had changed, but war, it seemed, had not. "System status," she said, her voice broadcasting through the empty bridge. "All primary systems operational," the ship's computer responded. "Weapons systems charging. Crew quarters empty. Awaiting orders. How long until we are combat ready?" 48 hours for full operational status. 72 hours to crew the ship with qualified personnel. Sora processed this. Too long. The Keltherans would be dead by then. Begin emergency protocols. Cut all non-essential systems. I want weapons and engines operational in 24 hours. Acknowledged. On Earth, in a small apartment in Seoul, Minho was having the strangest morning of his life. He was a historian who specialized in pre-council military history. It was a niche field. Most people found it morbid. Why study war when the galaxy was at peace? Now his specialty had made him the most important person on the planet. The government had sent soldiers to his apartment at dawn. They had been polite but firm. They needed him immediately. When he asked why, they had simply said that the old military was waking up, and they needed someone who understood how it thought. Now he stood in a briefing room, watching screens show ships coming to life all over human space. Destroyers in the asteroid belt, carriers in lunar orbit, submarines that could travel through space like water, weapons platforms that looked like something from a nightmare. "This is impossible," said Colonel Bora, who stood next to him. She was Earth Defense Force, but her job had always been ceremonial. She commanded a small patrol fleet that mostly rescued stranded cargo ships and helped with disasters. She had never expected to see real combat. "It is very possible," Minho said, reading the data. "These systems were designed to survive for centuries. Automated maintenance, self-repair, all waiting for the right activation code. But why keep them? Why not destroy them?" Minho looked at her. "Because the people who built them knew something. Peace is wonderful. But peace maintained only because nobody has the ability to break it is not real peace. It is just a pause between conflicts." A new screen activated showing the bridge of the Iron Resolve. Admiral Sora appeared, and even though she was an AI, even though she was a preserved consciousness and not a living person, her presence filled the room. "This is Admiral Sora to Earth Command. The Iron Resolve is operational. I am requesting permission to mobilize the fleet." Taeyang stepped forward. "Admiral, this is Ambassador Taeyang. The Galactic Council has ordered us to stand down. They fear what will happen if Earth remilitarizes." Sora's expression did not change. "I have reviewed the situation. The Vraks are committing genocide. The Council's forces are inadequate. The Keltherans will be extinct in 72 hours without intervention. I understand that, but, Ambassador, I was built for one purpose: to protect humanity and its allies from extinction-level threats. That purpose has not changed. The question is simple: will you give the order, or will I make the decision myself? The room went silent. Everyone understood what Sora was saying. The old military had never really been under civilian control. It had agreed to peace, had volunteered to sleep, but it had always reserved the right to wake if needed. Taeyang looked at the screens showing the dying Keltharan worlds. He thought about the Council's orders. He thought about his grandfather's stories of war. He thought about what kind of galaxy allowed genocide because it feared the alternative. "How fast can you get there?" he asked. 36 hours, Sora said, "then go." "And Admiral, try to remember why we put you to sleep in the first place." Sora almost smiled. "I remember perfectly. That is why I will succeed." The iron resolve began to move. Across human space, the fleet followed. Ships that had been silent for centuries fired their engines and turned toward Keltharan space. In the automated shipyards, newly printed vessels joined the formation. Minho watched them go, feeling awe and terror in equal measure. Bora stood beside him, already organizing volunteer crews. Most would be from ceremonial units and simulation enthusiasts, people who had trained on these old ships for fun, never imagining they would use them for real. "What are we doing?" Bora asked quietly. "What are we unleashing?" Minho had studied this era of human history his entire adult life. He knew what these ships could do. He knew why humanity had been so eager to put them away. "We are reminding the galaxy," he said, "that humans are very good at two things: making peace and making war. We forgot the second part." Maybe everyone needed the reminder. On every ship in the fleet, crews began boarding. Young people who had grown up in peace now manning weapons designed by people who knew nothing but war. They ran drills on systems 3 centuries old. They loaded weapons that had names like Hellfire and Judgment. They painted fresh letters on hulls that had not seen battle since Earth fought itself. The letters all said the same thing: no one fights alone. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. The galaxy watched in shock as sensors picked up the formation. 50 capital ships, 200 cruisers, 500 destroyers, all heading toward Keltharan space at maximum speed. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. Some species praised Earth for responding. Others demanded they turn back, fearing the return of human military might more than the Vrak's threat. But the fleet did not turn back. In Keltharan space, Hyunwoo received a message on the Morning Star. It was from Admiral Sora. "Merchant vessel Morning Star. This is Admiral Sora of Earth's military fleet. We received your call. Help is coming. Hold on for 36 more hours." Hyunwoo felt tears in his eyes. He had sent that signal not knowing if anything would answer. Now the old monsters of human history were coming to save people they had never met. He looked at Ji-won, saw the same emotion on her face. Then he opened a channel to Daeun on the Keltharan homeworld. "Help is coming," he told her. "Just hold on." Warlord Thaxus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the apex predator, and watched the Keltharan homeworld burn. It was beautiful in a way. The orbital stations crumbled under his guns. The defense satellites had been destroyed hours ago. Soon he would land his troops and finish what he had started. 7 colony worlds had already fallen. This would be the 8th and final victory. Thaxus was a practical creature. He stood 8 feet tall, covered in thick reptilian scales that had deflected bullets in 100 battles. His species, the Vraks, had come from a world where only the strong survived. They had fought their way to the stars through blood and fire. When they looked at the peaceful galaxy they had discovered, they saw weakness. They saw prey. The Keltharans had been perfect first targets. No military, no weapons, just soft creatures who believed in dialogue and understanding. Thaxus had enjoyed proving them wrong. "Warlord," his tactical officer said, "we are ready for final assault. All troops are prepared for landing." "Good," Thaxus said. "Begin." He stopped. Every alarm on the bridge had activated at once. "What is happening?" he demanded. The tactical officer stared at his screens in confusion. "Sir, I am detecting massive spatial distortions. Multiple jump signatures. Something is entering the system." "The Council reinforcements?" "No, sir, these signatures are different. More violent, more aggressive." Thaxus felt the first twinge of unease. "Show me." The main screen changed, showing the edge of the system. Space itself was tearing open, not with the gentle ripples that Council ships made when they traveled faster than light, but with violent ruptures that looked like wounds in reality. Then the human fleet arrived. 50 capital ships emerged first, each one massive and covered in weapons. Then came the cruisers, 200 of them, spreading out in perfect formation. Finally, the destroyers and frigates, 500 smaller ships that moved with predatory grace. The bridge of the apex predator went silent. "Count them," Thaxis said quietly. The tactical officer worked frantically. 750 ships, sir. Multiple classes. Design patterns unknown. Energy signatures. Sir, these readings cannot be correct. What do you mean? The largest ship, the one they are calling the Iron Resolve, is showing power output equivalent to 50 of our dreadnoughts. That is impossible. Thaxis stared at the screen. His fleet numbered 2,000 ships. He had overwhelming superiority. These humans were outnumbered almost 3-1. So why did he feel afraid? A communication channel opened. A human face appeared on screen. Female with dark eyes that had seen too much. "Admiral Sora of Vrak's fleet," she said calmly. "You are guilty of genocide against the Keltheran people. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Leave this system now. Return to your own space. Face justice through proper channels." Thaxis laughed. The sound was harsh and cruel. "You are outnumbered 3-1, human. Your ships are ancient museum pieces. You have made a mistake coming here." "I am giving you a chance to leave," Sora said. Her voice had not changed, but something in her eyes made Thaxis pause. "Take it." Thaxis cut the communication and turned to his weapons officer. "Destroy them." The Vrak's fleet opened fire. On the Iron Resolve, Lieutenant Yuna sat at her tactical station and watched the missiles coming. She was 24 years old. She had joined Earth Defense Force because she wanted to help people. She had never expected to be in a real battle. She had certainly never expected to be here, on a 300-year-old warship, facing an enemy that wanted to kill her. Her hands shook as she ran targeting solutions. "Steady," Admiral Sora said from the command chair. The AI's voice was calm, almost gentle. "You have trained for this. Trust your training." "But I trained on simulators," Yuna said. "This is real. The principles are the same. Calculate firing solutions. Acquire targets, execute." Yuna took a deep breath and focused on her screens. The Vrak's missiles were getting closer. In 30 seconds they would hit. "All ship," Sora broadcast. "Activate defensive grids. Weapons free. Show them what real warships can do." The human fleet came alive. Point defense systems activated, ancient but perfect. Thousands of small cannons tracked the incoming missiles with computer precision. The space between the fleets filled with fire as every missile was intercepted and destroyed. The Vrak's had thrown enough firepower to destroy 100 normal ships. Not a single human vessel was scratched. "Return fire," Sora said calmly. Yuna's fingers moved across her controls. Targeting data flowed to the weapon systems. The Iron Resolve had been built in an age when Earth fought itself, when humans needed to kill other humans who had the same technology, the same defenses, the same intelligence. Its weapons had been designed to overcome everything. The main railguns fired. Solid projectiles accelerated to a fraction of light speed, carrying kinetic energy that no shield could stop. They crossed the distance between fleets in seconds. 12 Vrak's warships simply ceased to exist. The projectiles went through their shields like paper, through their armor like air, through their hulls and out the other side. The ships broke apart, explosions blooming as reactors overloaded. "Target destroyed," Yuna said, her voice shaking. She had just killed thousands with one command. "Acquire next targets," Sora said. There was no emotion in her voice. No satisfaction, no regret. Just focus. "This is what we were built for." Across the fleet, other ships opened fire. Cruisers unleashed plasma cannons that burned at temperatures that made stars look cold. Destroyers launched quantum torpedoes that ignored shields entirely, phasing through matter to detonate inside enemy hulls. Frigates deployed causality mines that made ships cease to exist in the present by erasing them from the past. The Vrak's had weapons designed to overwhelm soft targets, to destroy cargo ships and civilian stations, to terrify species that had forgotten war. The humans had weapons designed to kill other humans, weapons built by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of violence before finally growing tired of it. There was no comparison. Thaxis watched in horror as his fleet died. His ships outnumbered the humans 3-1, but it did not matter. Every time his vessels fired, the humans intercepted everything. Every time the humans fired back, more of his ships vanished. "Pull back," he screamed. "Reform the line." But there was no line to reform. The human fleet moved through his formation like sharks through a school of fish. They were faster, more agile, more precise. Every shot found its target. Every maneuver was perfect. Thaxus had fought in 100 battles. He had conquered a dozen worlds. He had never seen anything like this. "Warlord," his tactical officer said, his voice breaking. "We have lost 300 ships. They have lost 0. Sir, we cannot win this. We outnumber them." "It does not matter. Their technology is beyond anything we have encountered. These are not peacekeepers. These are not council patrol ships. These are warships from an era when war was an art form." One of the human cruisers, the one they called the Eternal Vigil, moved past the apex predator at close range. Thaxus saw its hull up close, saw the weapons covering every surface, saw the scars from ancient battles. He realized with cold clarity that these ships had been built by people who knew nothing but war, people who had fought each other for so long that they had become very, very good at it, and then for some reason they had stopped. Now they had remembered how. "All ships," Thaxus said quietly. "Retreat. Full speed. Get us out of this system." But the humans had anticipated that. Half their fleet had circled around, cutting off escape routes. They were not here to fight. They were here to eliminate a threat. "Attention, Vrax fleet," Admiral Sora's voice broadcast on all channels. "You chose war. Now face its consequences." The battle continued for 6 hours. The human fleet methodically destroyed every Vrax warship that did not surrender. They disabled engines, targeted weapons, gave crews time to evacuate. They did not have to kill everyone, but they made it clear that resistance was futile. By the end, 2,000 Vrax warships had been reduced to 300 survivors. The rest were debris or burning hulks. The Keltheran system was clear. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. Only 2 had taken any damage at all, and that damage was minor. On the Keltheran homeworld, Dayun stood with millions of her people and watched the sky. They had expected to die today. Instead, they watched as ancient human warships drove their enemy away. Sunhee, an elderly Keltheran scientist, stood beside her. "I have studied history my entire life," she said quietly. "I knew humans had been warriors once, but I never understood what that meant. Not really. Not until now." Dayun nodded. She was crying, but she did not know if it was from relief or fear, maybe both. In orbit, Hyunwoo sat on the bridge of the Morning Star and watched the battle end. Jiwon was beside him, also crying. "We are alive," she said. "The Keltherans are alive." "Yes," Hyunwoo said. But he was looking at the human warships, at the efficient and terrible way they had destroyed the Vrax fleet, and he wondered what they had unleashed. Admiral Sora opened a channel to the surviving Vrax ships. Thaxus appeared on screen, his scales scorched, his pride shattered. "This is Admiral Sora to Vrax Warlord Thaxus. You are defeated. Return to your space. Tell your leaders what happened here. Tell them that if the Vrax Dominion continues its genocide, we will come for you next. Not with council ships. Not with peacekeepers. With us." Thaxus said nothing. The Keltheran homeworld celebrated for 3 days. Then they counted their dead, 3 billion. That was the number. 3 billion Keltherans killed in the Vrax assault. 7 colony worlds completely destroyed. Orbital infrastructure that would take decades to rebuild. An entire generation traumatized by horrors they had never imagined possible. Dayun stood in what had been a beautiful city. Now it was rubble. Buildings lay collapsed. Parks where children had played were filled with graves. She walked through the streets and saw survivors helping each other, sharing food, rebuilding with quiet determination. But she also saw the way they looked at the sky. With fear, wondering if the Vrax would return, wondering if next time help would arrive in time. Sunhee found her in the ruins. The elderly scientist looked tired. She had been helping coordinate rescue operations, using her knowledge to locate survivors trapped in collapsed structures. "The human ship has sent a shuttle," Sunhee said. "They want to begin repairs. Help us rebuild." "That is kind of them," Dayun said. "You do not sound happy." Dayun gestured at the destruction around them. "My people believe that all life is precious. That violence is never the answer. But violence saved us. Terrible, efficient violence. What does that say about everything we believed?" Sunny was quiet for a moment. "It says that the universe is complicated, and that sometimes being right about philosophy does not protect you from being dead." Above them, human ships worked alongside Keltheran vessels, clearing debris and establishing temporary shelters. Jiwon from the Morning Star had volunteered to help, bringing her engineering expertise to coordinate the relief efforts. She worked next to Junho, a young Keltharan who had lost his entire family in the attacks. He was only 12 years old. He barely spoke now, just worked mechanically following instructions. "Take a break," Jiwon told him gently. "You have been working for 6 hours." "I cannot stop," Junho said. "If I stop, I remember." Jiwon understood. She sat with him while he rested, giving him water and food. After a while, he asked her a question. "The humans who saved us, they are warriors?" "They were," Jiwon said. "Long ago. Now they are mostly merchants and engineers, like me. But they remembered how to fight." "Yes." Junho looked at his small hands. "Will you teach us? So next time we can protect ourselves?" Jiwon did not know how to answer. She looked up at the human warships in orbit, at the terrible power they represented. Did she want Junho to learn that? Did she want this gentle species to become what humans had once been? On Earth, the Galactic Council had convened an emergency session. Ambassador Taeyang stood before representatives from 300 species and tried to explain what humanity had done. "You reactivated your military without council approval," said Councillor Rin, a Velthian whose species had always been suspicious of humans. "You deployed weapons that the galaxy has not seen in centuries. You killed thousands of Vraks." "We saved billions of Keltharans," Taeyang replied. "You violated protocols. You demonstrated military superiority that threatens the balance of power. The Vraks were committing genocide. Your peacekeeping forces failed. Someone had to act." The council chamber erupted in arguments. Half the species praised humanity for saving the Keltharans. The other half feared what Earth might do with its newly awakened military power. Rin raised her hand for silence. "The question before us is simple. What happens now? Does humanity maintain this fleet? Do they return to peace? What prevents them from using these weapons for conquest instead of defense?" Taeyang took a deep breath. "I cannot answer that alone. Let me bring someone who can." A screen activated showing Admiral Sora on the bridge of the Iron Resolve. Her presence seemed to fill the chamber. "Councillor Rin," Sora said calmly, "you asked what prevents humans from using our weapons for conquest. The answer is simple. We already had these weapons. For 300 years we chose not to use them, not because we could not, but because we did not want to. But you used them now. Because genocide is unacceptable. Because watching innocent people die when we had the power to save them is unacceptable. The Vraks gave us 2 choices. Allow extinction or remember what we once were. We chose memory." Another counselor spoke up, representing a peaceful species called the Marathi. "Admiral Sora, your fleet is terrifying. The efficiency with which you destroyed the Vraks fleet was unlike anything we have seen. How can we trust that humans will not turn those weapons on us?" Sora was quiet for a moment. "I was human once. I died in the last great war humanity fought against itself. I saw what war does. I saw the cost. That is why when peace was offered, we took it eagerly. That is why we put away our weapons for 3 centuries. But we also learned something from our wars. We learned that true evil exists. We learned that sometimes the price of peace is the willingness to fight." Councillor Rin leaned forward. "So you believe the galaxy needs a military presence? That peace maintained by force is better than peace maintained by mutual agreement?" "I believe," Sora said, "that peace maintained by mutual agreement is wonderful when everyone agrees. But when someone decides to commit genocide, agreements become irrelevant. The Vraks did not care about your laws. They did not care about your protocols. They only cared about killing. Against such an enemy, you need the ability to respond." The council erupted in arguments again. Finally, Rin called for silence once more. "Then I propose a compromise. Humanity maintains a defensive fleet, not the full force you deployed, but enough to respond to threats. In exchange, you share your military technology with other council species. You help us build defenses." On Earth, General Kangmin listened to this proposal with growing horror. He was an old man, 70 years old, who had spent his life studying military history. He had been pulled from retirement to advise the government on what was happening. Now he sat in a briefing room with Colonel Bora and Minho, the historian, and tried to explain why Rin's proposal was dangerous. "You cannot give everyone these weapons," Kangmin said. "Our military doctrine was built on a simple principle. War should be so terrible that nobody wants it. If everyone has these weapons, eventually someone will use them." Bora shook her head. But if we keep them only for ourselves, the Council will never trust us. They will always see us as a threat. Better feared and alive than trusted and dead. Minho spoke up. There is another option. What if we create a defense force that serves the Council? Not individual species arming themselves, but a proper military structure dedicated to protecting everyone? Kang Min considered this. A galactic military? Under whose command? The Council's, but trained by humans. Led by humans who remember why these weapons should never be used lightly. It was a radical idea. The galaxy had never had a unified military force. But then the galaxy had never faced the Vrax before. They debated for hours. Meanwhile, across human space, the fleet waited. On the Iron Resolve, Lieutenant Yuna sat in her quarters and tried not to think about the fact that she had killed thousands of people with a few commands. She had nightmares every time she closed her eyes. In her dreams, she saw the Vrax ships breaking apart. Saw the crew being thrown into space, saw the fires. She had saved the Keltharans. She knew that, but she had also killed. And the efficiency with which she had done it terrified her. A message came through. Admiral Sora wanted to see her. Yuna went to the bridge. Sora's avatar was waiting, looking at the stars. "You are struggling," Sora said. It was not a question. "I killed people," Yuna said quietly. "I know they were bad. I know they were killing innocents. But I still killed them." "Yes, you did. And that weight will stay with you forever. That is the price of using these weapons. How did you deal with it?" Sora turned to her. "By never forgetting it. By making sure every death had meaning. By fighting only when there was no other choice. And by stopping the moment the threat ended. We could have hunted down every Vrax ship. We could have followed them home and destroyed their worlds. But we did not. Because that would have made us the monsters." Yuna nodded slowly. "Will we fight again?" "I hope not. But if we must, I need officers who understand the weight of what they do. Who feel the cost. Not soldiers who kill easily, but soldiers who know what killing means." Back on the Keltharan homeworld, Hyunwoo walked through a refugee camp. The Morning Star had stayed to help with relief efforts. He brought supplies, helped set up shelters, did whatever he could. Junho found him there. The young Keltharan looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Captain Hyunwoo," Junho said. "You called for help. The ancient ships came because you called them." "Yes," Hyunwoo said. "Will you teach us to fight like humans, so we never need to call for help again?" Hyunwoo knelt down to Junho's level. He thought about the question carefully. "Junho, humans learned to fight because we fought each other for thousands of years. We got very good at killing, but we also learned that being good at killing does not make you happy. It does not make you safe. It just makes you dangerous, but you saved us, we did. But we also terrified ourselves doing it. Those ships, those weapons, they come from the darkest part of our history. We put them away because we were ashamed of what we had become. So you will not teach us?" Hyunwoo sighed. "I will tell you what I think. I think you should learn to defend yourselves, but not by becoming warriors like we were. Learn to build defenses. Learn to protect." 3 months passed. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what humanity would do with its power. The human fleet remained in active service, but it had changed. Half the old warships had been decommissioned again, their crews returning to civilian life. The other half had been reorganized into something new, the Guardian Fleet. Captain Nari commanded one of the new ships, the Guardian's Watch. She was 30 years old, and unlike the old crews, she had volunteered specifically for this role, not to make war but to prevent it. Her ship was fast and powerful, but its design was different from the old warships. It had defensive systems that could protect entire planets, medical facilities to provide disaster relief, sensors that could detect distress calls from halfway across the galaxy. It was built to save people, not kill them. But if killing was necessary to save innocent lives, it could do that too. Today her ship was heading toward Vrax space. "But not to attack, Captain," her communications officer said. "We are receiving multiple civilian transmissions from the border worlds. They are begging for help." Nari had studied the intelligence reports. After the defeat at Keltharan, the Vrax Dominion had fractured. The military leaders had blamed their failure on civilian weakness. They had turned their weapons inward, purging anyone they saw as disloyal. Millions of Vrax civilians were fleeing, trying to escape their own government. The galaxy watched to see what humanity would do. Would they let the Vrax suffer? After all, it was the Vrax who had started this. But Nari remembered Admiral Sora's words. We stop when the threat ends. We do not become the monsters. Open a channel, Nari said. All frequencies. Broadcast in Vrax language, the channel opened. Nari spoke carefully, her words being translated in real time. This is Captain Nari of the Guardian's Watch, representing Earth and the Galactic Council. We have received your distress calls. We are establishing a humanitarian corridor. All Vrax civilians who wish to leave their territory will be protected. Your military has been warned not to interfere. On the border world of Vraxos Minor, a young Vrax named Yunji heard the broadcast and started to cry. She was a teacher, not a soldier. She had never wanted war, but when her government had started killing anyone who spoke against the military, she had run. Now human ships were coming to save her. The same humans who had destroyed her government's fleet. The same humans her leaders called monsters. She gathered her students, all young Vrax children orphaned by the purges, and began the long journey to the border. The Vrax military tried to stop the evacuation. Warships moved to blockade refugee ships. That was when they learned that humanity had been very clear about their intentions. Admiral Sora's fleet appeared at the border. Not to invade, not to conquer, but to protect. When Vrax military ships tried to fire on refugee vessels, human ships intercepted. Not with overwhelming force, not with the terrible weapons they had used at Keltherin. They disabled engines. They blocked shots. They gave the military ships every opportunity to back down. Most did. A few did not, and learned why humanity had won the first battle so easily. The operation lasted 3 weeks. Over 2 million Vrax civilians were evacuated. Some went to neutral worlds. Some, surprisingly, asked to settle on Keltherin worlds. Daeon met the first group of Vrax refugees personally. She stood with Sunhee and other Keltherin leaders, and faced beings whose species had tried to exterminate hers. Yunji led her students off the transport ship. She looked at the Keltherins and fell to her knees. "I am sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I am so sorry for what my people did to yours." Daeon looked at this Vrax, at the children behind her, and made a choice. She helped Yunji to her feet. "You did not do this," Daeon said. "Your government did. You are not responsible for their evil. But I am Vrax, how can you forgive us?" "Because," Daeon said softly, "humans taught me something. They showed me that sometimes you must fight. But they also showed me that you must know when to stop fighting. The war is over. Now we heal." In the Galactic Council chambers, Counselor Rin watched the refugee operation with fascination. She had expected humanity to seek revenge. Instead, they were saving their enemies. She called a meeting with Ambassador Taiyang and Admiral Sora. "I have a proposal," Rin said. "A formal one, with council backing. We create a galactic defense force trained by humans, led by humans, but serving all species. Its mission is simple: prevent genocide, stop slavery, protect the innocent, but never conquer, never occupy, only defend." Taiyang looked at Sora. The Admiral's avatar seemed thoughtful. "What would the command structure look like?" Sora asked. "Mixed species officers, human tactical doctrine, but ultimate authority rests with the Council. Checks and balances. No single species can use it for aggression." "And if the Council orders us to stand down during a genocide?" Rin smiled. "Then we include an override clause. If a situation meets specific criteria, genocide, slavery, extinction-level threats, the defense force can act independently. But they must justify their actions afterward. And if they abuse that power, the entire program ends. It was not perfect, but it was a start." On Earth, General Kangmin and Minho worked together to write the doctrine for this new force. They studied every war humanity had fought. They looked at what had worked, what had failed, and most importantly, what had corrupted previous militaries. "The key," Kangman said, "is making sure the soldiers understand they are guardians, not conquerors. They must be strong enough to win any fight, but wise enough to know when not to fight." Minho nodded. "We should require all officers to study not just military history, but also the history of peace. They need to understand what they are protecting, not just what they are fighting." They created training programs that included philosophy alongside tactics, ethics alongside weapons training. Every soldier would spend time in civilian communities remembering who they served. Colonel Bora volunteered to help train the first class. Lieutenant Yuna, despite her nightmares, did too. They had learned the cost of violence. Now they would teach others. Junho, the young Keltherin who had lost his family, applied to the new Galactic Defense Academy. He was accepted, becoming one of the first non-humans to train in human military doctrine. He studied hard. He learned about weapons and tactics, but he also learned about mercy and restraint. He learned that the strongest warriors were often the ones who chose not to fight. 5 years passed. The galaxy changed slowly, carefully. The Guardian fleet grew to include ships from dozens of species. Keltharans served alongside humans. Reformed Vrax flew beside their former enemies. They all wore the same uniform, swore the same oath, to protect the innocent, to stop genocide, to defend the defenseless. They were tested dozens of times. Pirates attacked a colony world and the Guardian fleet responded, rescuing hostages and capturing the pirates without a single civilian death. A brutal dictatorship tried to exterminate a minority population, and human-trained forces evacuated 2 million people before establishing a no-fly zone that stopped the killing. Each time, the galaxy watched to see if humanity would abuse its power. Each time, the Guardian fleet did exactly what it promised: protect people and leave. The old warships were gradually retired. The Iron Resolve was the last to go. Admiral Sora stood on her bridge one final time, looking at the stars. "It is time," she said to Minho, who had come to witness the decommissioning. "The galaxy does not need monsters anymore. It has guardians. Will you go back to sleep?" Minho asked. Sora smiled. "No, this time I will simply shut down. My purpose is fulfilled. The galaxy knows how to protect itself now." "Thank you," Minho said, "for remembering when to fight, and for remembering when to stop." That, Sora said, was always the hardest lesson. Her consciousness faded slowly. The Iron Resolve went dark. It would be preserved as a museum again, a reminder of what humanity had been and what it had chosen to become. Captain Hyun-woo retired from space travel and opened a small restaurant on Earth. He served food from a dozen different species, including Keltharan delicacies and even some Vrax dishes. It became a popular gathering place for Guardian Fleet officers on leave. Jiwon became the chief engineer for the Guardian Fleet's shipyards, designing vessels that could protect without destroying. Her designs became the standard across the galaxy. Dayun became the Keltharan ambassador to Earth. She worked tirelessly to promote understanding between species, to ensure that the horrors her people suffered would never happen again to anyone. On the anniversary of the Battle of Keltharan, monuments were built on a dozen worlds. They all carried the same inscription: "In memory of those who built these ships, who wielded them, and who had the wisdom to put them away. May they never need to wake again, but if they must, may they answer the call of the innocent." In orbit around Earth, silent defense platforms maintained their watch. They were automated systems, capable of printing warships if needed. But their existence was enough. The galaxy knew that if anyone committed genocide, if anyone enslaved populations, if anyone threatened the innocent, humanity's ancient weapons could wake again. That knowledge kept the peace better than any treaty. Junho graduated from the Defense Academy at the top of his class. He was assigned to the Guardian's watch, serving under Captain Nari. On his first day, she asked him why he had joined. "Because humans taught me something important," he said.